Hi, my name is James Harrison, CEO of InfoSafe. I've got some very important information to share with you over the next few minutes that directly affects your business. I'm going to tell you about the fastest growing crime of the 21st century and share with you why it affects your business and your customers and your employees. I'll also tell you about new federal, state, and industry regulations that require you to take action to defend yourself and your customers and your employees against this crime. This is quite possibly the greatest threat that your business may face in the 21st century, yet few people know about this problem, and even fewer know what to do about it. The big problem I'm talking about is identity theft and fraud. Everybody pretty much knows that identity theft is a big problem today. You hear about it in the news constantly. Everybody seems to know somebody who's been a victim of identity theft. 1 in 20 adults now are victimized by identity theft. Up to 10 million people a year, additionally, are victimized by identity theft now. Even the U.S. Department of Treasury, an advisor to the U.S. Department of Treasury, has come out and said that identity theft and computer crimes is now a bigger profit to criminals than selling illicit drugs. So this is a bigger deal than the war on drugs is. And most people don't know that. But the reality is, stolen information, identity information, is valuable information today. It's gold on the open market. There are underground markets for this type of information to be bought and sold. So criminals are after information because they can make a lot of money by selling it. That's driving this big problem of identity theft here in the 21st century, and the problem's not going away anytime soon. See, the real issue here is the exposure, the loss, or the theft of that information. It's not just the theft of it. Listen to the key words, the exposure, the loss, and the theft of that information. So when you consider the way you collect and process information, you don't want to lose it as much as you don't want it stolen. So how are we doing as a business community? How are businesses across the country doing? Well, if we had to grade it, we're probably getting a failing grade on how we protect information that we collect today. The Privacy Rights Clearinghouse keeps track of these kinds of data exposures and loss. And the reality is, since 2005, now over 500 million customer records have been lost or stolen, either by an employee or by a thief. 500 million records. That's a lot. And businesses are the core of that data breach, whether it's exposure, the loss, or the theft of that information. So no, we really aren't doing that well. The FBI has come out and done a study, and they show, and in their reports, they show about $67 billion a year in losses and damages due to cybercrime and identity theft in the workplace. That's $67 billion a year in lost profits, in damages. So it is a significant problem to businesses today. We do need to take this problem seriously for a variety of reasons, let alone the financial reasons. Let's take a quick look at actually how this exposure or loss or theft takes place. There's a lot of information that we collect in everyday business. Typically what that's called is personally identifiable information, or PII. That's the information you got to be concerned about. This is information that, when combined with name and address and phone number, creates an identity. And when a thief gets a hold of that information, it's an immediate identity theft case, or fraud can be perpetrated in that person's name. So when we talk about personally identifiable information, what are we talking about? We're talking about social security numbers, dates of birth, checking account numbers, credit card numbers. We're talking about a number of types of information. If you collect photocopies of personal information, tax information, tax ID numbers, if you have a business, you have EIN numbers. All of this type of identifiable information is what the thieves are after. They call that personally identifiable information. And that's a very short list of really how much information we collect in everyday business. But understand, this is the information that the bad guys are after. So as we do business every day, we got to consider, what are we doing with that information? How do we collect it? How do we store it? How do we share that information? And how does it happen to fall in the hands of a thief? Well, there's a couple of different ways that actually happens. The insider employee problem, believe it or not, is the #1 problem. When you think of this type of a crime of identity theft, you may be thinking of an outsider, a thief, or a crook coming into your business, trying to hack into your computers and steal that information. But believe it or not, and this is surprising to most people, that's not the problem. The biggest problem is insiders. It's employees. It's people that you know. And to be honest, it's mostly accidental. And so while we own and operate businesses, you've got to pay attention to what happens within your own walls first. And then you've got to pay attention to what happens outside. So if there's two primary ways this information is exposed or lost or stolen. Number one, again, is employees or insiders. And if you consider that, most of it accidental, there is some criminal activity happening inside businesses today as well. A disgruntled employee or an ex-employee may find that they can capture data and use that and steal it, take advantage of it. There's opportunities all around. If you consider the way that we process information, there's opportunities everywhere. So an employee may make a mistake, but they may also be doing it intentionally. Let's talk about the mistakes. What about just piles of paper that go into the trash that have personal information on it without being shredded? What about improperly disposing of a computer? You get rid of a computer, you sell it off, but you don't properly delete the hard drive. What about paper processes, filing systems? If you have file cabinets and you collect information, what about credit cards? Process them online on the web or through paper. There's a variety of ways you collect and process and transfer and share information. And there's too many places where employees have an opportunity to be responsible for that information and then possibly lose or expose or even steal that information. Think of laptop computers. Think of those USB flash drives that you put into computers to transfer information from one to another. Those are all data sources that thieves and opportunists look at as opportunities to take advantage of that information. On the other side, you've got the hackers and the cyber criminals, the bad guys from the outside trying to break into the walls of your company. How do they do that? Well, it's the everyday average things. It's the email that somebody in your office opens up that is loaded with a keylogger or a rootkit or some other malware that infects your computers and tracks that information and sends that information back out. These guys work in insidious ways, and if you're not well aware of what's going on and all your employees are not well aware of what's going on, bad things can happen. You can be exposed very quickly. Okay, so we know this is a big problem. It's happening all around. What's at stake? What are the consequences to you as a business owner? The first and biggest consequence you have to pay attention to are the financial damages that come from a crime like this. They come in a number of forms. Probably the biggest one would be lost customers. When you lose the trust of a customer, when the customer loses trust with you, that's very, very damaging to the future of your business. You know, some studies show in CIO magazine, that's Chief Information Officer magazine, there was an article recently that talked about the effect of lost customers after a data breach, after that information's been exposed. In that article, they pointed out that 40% of the people are considering not doing business with you any longer. 20% actually do turn away and seek another company to do business with. And 5% are considering a lawsuit. Those are staggering numbers. When a customer loses trust with you, you can almost write your business off in a lot of ways. So lost customers is one of the big consequences. What about a tarnished or damaged image? How do you think that might affect your business should you have a data breach or lost information? You've heard of businesses in the headlines, haven't you? You hear it all the time. In fact, it's happening literally every day. You don't want to have your company's name in the press in this way. That's not a good move for helping to grow your business, especially in tough economic times. Another one of the big risks that you face from this kind of a crime is stolen money. It's money literally taken right out of your bank accounts. You know, the FBI recently uncovered a crime ring, and in fact, they're an international crime ring, and they traced them over a period of months, and what they found is they had actually stolen over $100 million out of small and mid-sized business bank accounts. And they did it through simple means. They'd send an email with a keylogger or something to the bookkeeper or the CEO or managers of the businesses. And they would open those emails up saying they had to update their accounts or other things. These are called phishing scams, but these emails would simply place a keylogger on there and track banking login information. So if you did online banking, they'd capture your login credentials, they had access to your bank accounts, and they simply went in and took the money. These kinds of damages are irreparable. You can't retrieve that money. That money is siphoned off through what are called money mules and shipped overseas. You can't get the money back. $100 million in one single cybercrime ring that was discovered. And there are more being discovered all the time. Just last month, another crime ring was discovered, and they caught them earlier on, but there was $12.5 million siphoned out of small business bank accounts in a similar fashion. This is not a problem that just has to deal with your customers or your employees' information being put at risk and their identity theft. This also has an awful lot to do with your very financial well-being of your company. As you might imagine, the government has taken action on this. The problem has become so large. The criminals are everywhere, and accidental data loss is happening at a record rate. The government has taken action. They've passed multiple laws and regulations that mandate that businesses protect the information that they collect. And that's really the heart of the matter for businesses today. You've got the criminals on the one side coming after you, you've got accidental exposure of information, and now you have the government coming in and saying, business owners, you better do something about it. You better be responsible, take care of that customer information, take care of that employee information, and they now have teeth in it through laws where fines and penalties can be levied against this. You know, it's not just the federal government, but it's also state governments and it's also the industry. Let me just tell you briefly a little bit about these laws and regulations. This is something that you're going to need to know. From a federal level, there are multiple laws, in fact, approaching a dozen laws now that apply directly to businesses that mandate that you protect the information that you collect for your customers and your employees. That the laws are things like red flags rule. You may have heard of some of these. Red flags rule, FACTA, the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act. You've got HIPAA for the healthcare industry. The laws are numerous, yet they all point to the same thing. Be responsible and take care of the information that you collect. From a state perspective, you know, virtually every state now has one or more data breach notification laws or security and information privacy laws. You know, 48 states, and probably all 50 very soon, will have these types of laws with heavy fines and penalties associated. The states are now getting involved in saying businesses within their state need to be responsible and take action. The industry has also come forward. The private industry, the credit card industry in particular. You've got Visa, MasterCard, American Express, Discover, and a couple of others, and they've formed what's called the PCI Standards Council. And this group basically has come out and said, if you process credit cards, if you accept credit cards, you must protect that cardholder information. So they've set forward a standard of what you must do as a business to protect that information. And if you don't protect that information, again, fines, penalties, transaction fees, so on and so forth. So from a federal level, from a state level, and from an industry level, the message is loud and clear to businesses today. Be responsible. Take action now to protect that information before an accident happens and exposed information happens, or before criminals actually get a hold of that information.